Johnny Fontana, Real World INFJ Scorpio, back with another video. I would say this is my official comeback video. I've made another video, I think, before. I've made several videos, but this one is my official return video, right? So I wanted to say, first of all, thank you for some of the subscribers who have been, even though I've been out of pocket for I think almost a year now. Folks are still subscribing and what do you call that again? Commenting. And as you know, I don't read comments. People who normally contact me, it's usually via email, and so we've been communicating that way. But as far as me coming back to read, I just don't do it.
So it's interesting. You have to find a way as a creator of any of this stuff to deliberately detach yourself from the measurable and focus on this thing, which is kind of abstract. And I was wondering if you have any ideas for that.
So there's a bunch of ideas. So one is figure out ways where you don't see the number of views on things.
How do you do that?
So I wrote a Chrome extension for myself that hides the number of views.
That's really funny. What's funny is YouTube made a change and they just continue to make the analytics front and center, which makes sense from their perspective. They're trying to give people better data on what is successful and what makes something successful. They're trying to train their creators. But in the process, it can lead to some unhealthy habits of thinking views define a video. And so I've long thought, okay, I've learned analytics. I understand retention. Now I sort of want to do the Zen, forget it all now. And you can only do that if it's out of your sight.
So that's essentially me, right? So this video is basically about the INFJ intensity and social calibration, right? I'm kicking things off strong right out the gate. But this is off the cuff. I was just sitting down and I'm thinking about, okay, what am I going to say? Because I wanted to have an intro video before starting off with the new material. And I'm taking this a little differently. And it's not going to be a sustained change, meaning that I am veering towards the more relationship pseudo manosphere, right? Not necessarily in the aspect of the red pill, but more so of understanding human dynamics from a relationship perspective, right? So reacting to videos from other persons and all that stuff, and then from there I may take it to a different space. So it's not like I'm going to be in this manosphere, red pill, or that particular for the continuation of my time here on YouTube. But it's just one of those things where I feel that at this point in time, it's very important. It's something that's being spoken about on many platforms. And I think it's very interesting in terms of how we interact, both male and female and what have you. But I think it's important. And so I'm going to use my INFJ, aka intuitive feeling approach, right? In terms of how I dissect, right? And so about me really quickly, I'm actually in Europe, right? I'm in Istanbul, Turkey. I picked up a job. I'm on a 1-year contract, right? I don't think I'm going to extend. I have an opportunity to extend, but I'm not going to. So as a result, I'm going to be moving to Germany next, right? So me and the family. I'm alone here, just based on the current posture and location, bordering certain hostile countries, but I will be moving to Germany with the family. So they're excited about that. My wife, obviously, she's from Latvia. She's also half Russian as well. So being able to go back to Europe, me being able to provide her, the opportunity to go back to Europe is going to be very interesting for her. So now that we got that out of the way, the formalities, let's get into what we came here for. I'm excited, right? This is a journey. Again, it's not going to be sustained, meaning that these topics are not going to be like, I might do a month of it and then move on to something else and then come back and so forth. So again, there's no rhyme or reason in the way that I do things because it's not about clicks, it's not about subscribers. It's about just genuine love for this and passion and sharing my experience. Also, I want to say this whole INFJ MBTI thing, right? Like Scorpio thing. I relate to it. A lot of people don't. I remember I was a little gung-ho about it, in the beginning in terms of like, I'm the INFJ, and I would get not upset, but I would try to prove people wrong. And I think it's just a competitive nature in me, being from New York City, being around that sort of competitive environment, being around sports, prior military, law enforcement, just having that competitive edge and having to always prove yourself in a workspace, social space. So, just between me and you, like, I get a kick out of people like not believing that I'm INFJ because they're like, man, like, how can you be so like outspoken and forward in your assessment and your analysis and even just the way that you carry yourself, but yet be INFJ? Like to many people it's counterintuitive. They don't understand it. And other people, it's like they're like, you're an ISFJ and this, that, and the third. And I get a kick out of it because it's like I like doing the research. I like trying to prove people wrong, right? It's not necessarily convincing people. I'm not here to convince you whether I'm INFJ or not. But it's like I like to provide information that can be like, hey, listen, you can be one way, but be perceived as another. Clip 1, go.
In 2006, I was so shy, couldn't say hi to anyone. I couldn't even ask a stranger, an old person, like a nice old lady in the street, couldn't ask him for the time. I got nervous around family dinners, family gatherings. I was the most shy, stifled, awkward person you'd ever meet. I'm extremely analytical. I'm an overthinker. If you're, into personality types, my personality type is INTJ. That's my background. That's where I come from. I was also very miserable, very lazy, didn't take much action. It was bad. Okay, if you met the old me back in 2006 versus me today, you'd be like, how? Like, it's one of the, being very modest, craziest transformations that you've ever seen.
So you see, I've used him quite a few times in my previous videos, right? And you see how socially adept and like really in tune to just the social dynamics he is, like really understanding cues and like I'll give you another clip 2, go.
The way that we're conditioned, literally all of us assume that this is our default. Meaning, do you want to know what your default is? If right now you stopped doing whatever you're doing, like who here is into bettering themselves? I'd assume everyone. Who here is working on becoming more confident? Who here is working on becoming more healthy, more successful, make more money, so on and so forth? Everyone. What if I told you, stop doing that? What happens if you stop doing all of that? We immediately think we're gonna fall. It's true. It's like we're always running away from this shit. It's like we're running towards something better and running away from our shitty little default. And that's why everything that we do is just very fucking compulsive. If you're someone who's like working on being confident, what are you constantly reinforcing? You're not confident to begin with. If you're someone who's working on self-improvement, what are you constantly reinforcing? That you need to be improved. So it's endless.
Like, that's some really insane, crazy stuff. But that's from an INTJ, right? Not too far off from an INFJ. And remember, like he says, he basically couldn't even socialize around his family. He was just so, so people overcome their insecurities and their shyness and their awkwardness, right? And it comes through, again, exposure to the right situations, to the right people, and also learning, right? And it's one of those things where it's unfortunate, but not everyone has the aptitude. Not every INFJ has the aptitude, nor do they have the opportunity to put themselves in a situation. Like I said, I always say this, and I've always maintained that I have been fortunate to land in certain situations, and as a result, built on those previous experiences in order to capture, because then I'm like, this is where it has taken me before. I'm recalling past experiences, and then I'm moving forward, right?
Look, let me put it this way. In a given interaction, there are an infinite number of actions and reactions that can unfold, right? Within that infinite range, however, generalizations can be made and patterns can be found. And in order to discover these things, you got to have the largest data set that you possibly can, right? So put another way, massive repetition of social interaction is the only way to cultivate a noticeably improved level of social intelligence. You want to have that biggest data set that you possibly can to draw from. And so again, let me say it again. Massive repetition of social interaction is the only way to cultivate a noticeably improved level of social intelligence.
And of course, obviously, there are missteps along the way. I've had to recalibrate, and we're going to talk about that when it comes to the INFJ intensity and understanding, hey, how to step back, when to, go forward, when to like sort of ease back, and when to go ahead and despite, the tension, keep the pedal going, because at the end of the day, we need to push through, right? So I have a fellow YouTuber, INFJ, and I forget his name off the top, but he made a video, and it's funny because I actually took this video and I cut it up a little bit, which I'm going to use here for instructional purposes. And I shared it to my family, like to my father, to my brother and sister. And it's funny because my father was like, man, like, is that you? He's like, it's so funny because from all the years that you've been trying to convince us or explain like where you're coming from, like he basically articulated it perfectly and beautifully. And it's like, they were like, man, like, now we get it. So you've probably seen it, if not, but we're going to go ahead and present it. And obviously I'm going to comment on it. And also I'm going to provide you supporting material as I always do. Hey, I'm back. Are you ready for this? All right, let's go.
So I've had a couple situations in my own life recently that have really got me thinking about this topic. Do people perceive me as being intense? Are INFJs in general perceived as being intense? What's behind that? Is it because we actually are intense, or is there something else going on here? First, I'm going to dive in just to a little bit of background to kind of build up the scene here. So I think the first thing to note is that INFJs in general have a lot going on in their minds. And a lot of it is even a little mysterious to us, and that is that introverted intuition dominant function. So that's the dominant function of an INFJ, introverted intuition. It's sort of this intuitive process, it's a perceiving process, it sort of exists in our own minds. It seems to me that the kind of main job of introverted intuition is finding patterns in things and putting these concepts together with all this information that at first might seem unrelated, sort of like a puzzle. And quite often we will have these sort of hunches or feelings almost that a thing is a certain way. And can we say definitively that it is that way? No. But for me, often these hunches are kind of a starting point for verification. So I have a hunch, let me investigate and see if this is correct or true. Is INFJs are much more people focused than INTJs. INTJs are more systems, probabilities, future thinkers, data, non-people focused things. INFJs are really interested in people, society, culture, all these sort of people related things and systems.
And that's why I've sort of moved into this new realm of like social of relationships, because partly I've had some questions, right? I mean, I've been married 19 years, going on 20 next August 2023. Actually, no, 18. Sorry, I've been 18 years. I'm sorry, it's 18 years, and married and together with my wife 20 years. And so, yeah, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of growth from 25 to 45. I'm 45 now. Just hit it this past October. King of Scorpios, 24 of October. But again, in those 20 years, you change, right? Not only do you change quite often in terms of how you see life, how you move a certain way, how you change your purpose, changing careers, right? So a lot of these are not only yourself changing, but the person who you are with, introducing children, introducing, family dynamics. So you start to question, right? And you want perspective, right? So instead of now always going to a counselor or whatever, you just go online and try to figure things out. And not only that, it's not necessarily issues that I'm having within my relationship, but the dissonance that we are all experiencing because of how society is developing, right? In terms of women now having more opportunities, and men, going through their own frustrations, social media, right? Online influence, hustle culture, you name it. So all of these factors have been a part and integrated into our lives. And so a lot of us don't know how to adapt, right? Because it's coming on so quickly. So, it can be challenging. So as a result, I've tried to do some digging and to find out, why am I, thinking like this? Does it make sense for me? Do I feel a certain way? And again, as I'm getting older, the way that I think changes. And so trying to do some research, you fall upon this whole manosphere. And I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say. I agree with the premise and the premise of the message, but not necessarily the messengers and how the recipients receive that message, right? So that's where it comes from, the whole people, social aspect and digging deep, right? That's where it all comes from on my end. And that's why I'm taking a different approach.
So it seems to be that a lot of our conclusions revolve around people and the behavior and trying to figure people out. I think for a lot of us, if we can find the right people to have discussions with, to kind of throw these ideas around, that can be really healthy for an INFJ.
And I'm going to stop it right here. And that's one of the most important things that I found myself in the past, I would say 3 years. I've had a good friend of mine, and we are not together. We haven't been together for the past, I think, 2 years, but weekly we interact via WhatsApp. He's in another country, and he's also working for the government as well. And we keep in touch. So, for example, if I have an issue, right, at work, or I'm dealing with certain individuals or certain personalities or whatever the case may be, I'll send them a long voice message, 15, 20, 30 minute voice message. And well, I'll dissect everything, I'll go into everything, and he'll come back and he'll dissect and, give me feedback, whether it be positive or negative, or maybe ways that I need to adjust, how I can look at it, different perspectives, give me, further context, and we go back and forth. And sometimes I'm in a space where I'm spiraling and I'm just like, oh man, like I can't deal with it, or I'm stressed out, or I'm panicking, I'm feeling anxiety. And you don't want to show people who you work with that anxiety. So like I go back home and I sort of like, I don't, what do you call it again? Subvert, or I don't suppress these feelings, rather that I have him that I can speak to. And also my wife as well. So when I'm going through some stuff, I'll call her, and then, so I have two people who I can rely on in order to sort of help preserve my sanity. And someone said something to me the other day, which I found to be extremely remarkable, was like, hey, you're like an energizer bunny. Like you really, like charge up really quickly. So whereas a lot of people, they'll sort of get down on themselves and they'll maintain whatever it is, they'll dwell on the issues. Whereas for me, I'll have some issues, but I'll overcome it quickly. And part of it is because I've been exposed to a lot of these stresses, so I know how to deal with it, right? Again, it takes time. It takes time. It takes, a lot of fortitude. It's not something that just comes naturally to an INFJ. Like it's been years, right? So again, years of being in the military, years of being, law enforcement, years of just dealing with different types of personalities and trying to figure people out. Again, I'm 45, so someone who's 20, 25, just a different experience, right? You don't have that momentum behind you like I have. So that's why it's easy for me then to provide this perspective so that you as individuals can go on. It's not for me to teach. I'm not a teacher. I'm not giving you advice. I'm just providing perspective so that you can take that perspective and then formulate your own ideas and experiences. But it's just one of those things where I'm starting to lose my track. So first video back and I'm losing track. Let's get back into the video.
Somebody, sort of a kindred spirit that we can, bounce ideas off, and we're not going to be judged for being inquisitive. But unfortunately, I feel like most people aren't that. Most people maybe find our inquisitive natures, a little curious at the very least, maybe even interrogating in the worst case, and they don't like it.
And that, I think I'm gonna go ahead and show you another clip with me and my father, right? That interview. Take it.
How would you characterize your intuition in terms of dealing with people, being able to read people throughout your business endeavors and so forth, and just your social interactions?
Well,
and where do you think that also comes from as well? Like your chameleon style, because how, like I said, being a police officer, being brought up in the better part of northern New Jersey, also from Queens, a little bit more of an urbanized area. At the same time, having that military exposure of dealing with people from the outdoors and so forth and so on, so we can sort of address people under different circumstances. So how would you say you've developed your intuition and also being able to interact within different social circles?
Well, I am very similar to you in many ways, but I'm also very different.
So in what ways similar?
Well, we are people's people. Okay. I like to understand people the same way you do, but we just have a different approach. Yours is more direct, is deeper, perhaps intrusive at times. I may get the same results, but I will take longer. I will have a more diplomatic approach, and I will gauge the other person to determine whether he or she would be receptive. And that's important, because otherwise I may find myself closing a door or putting people on the defensive.
Now, but is this something that you've learned and have been able to cultivate over the years?
Absolutely. After all, good judgment comes from experience, which comes from bad judgment. That's what they say, right? So, made a lot of mistakes along the way. I had my own infrastructure, 50 plus employees with independent contractors. Now I work primarily as a consultant. For me, it's no longer 6 degrees of separation, but more like 2 or 3. I can get you to meet pretty much anyone if I feel that you have the right project and it deserves to be taken to certain people. So for me to achieve that, I have to be very cautious, I have to be loyal and very discreet and not threatening.
So my father, he said, quite a few times that he doesn't like being around me. This is in the past, right? Obviously I've changed, but this is pre-2013, around like 2009, 2010. Said he didn't like to be around me because I was so interrogated. And that's what I used to do to my other family members as well. I would sort of impose myself, trying to figure out, ask questions, try to dig into situations, psychoanalyze people. Didn't know that it's really affecting people. People don't like that.
There's going to be an array of eye contact changes in the pupil, changes in body language, changes in vocal tone. So if you're talking to somebody and you can tell they have closed off vocal tone, so maybe you say something and they're like, yeah, like they're breaking away from you, they're using closed off vocal tone. They don't want to continue that interaction. Number one thing that you want to do is say, oh, great to meet you. I'll see you later.
And that's where the whole intensity came, because my father said, yeah, I'm too intense. Because I'm trying to figure things out and I just don't want to let it go. It's like something's bothering me and I'm asking questions, and even though I have the answer, but I just want that little nugget, right? I want that little nugget, like, I want to feel that the cup is right there, but I wanted to feel to that specific line based on information that I have in my own mind, and I just wanted to align properly. And I just constantly go for more information.
But you want to just be aware of what that other person's experiencing by looking at their body language, vocal tone, everything. Just have that social awareness, and you can put that directly in proportion to how good you're feeling. Like if you're really, really fluid and you're feeling really, really good and you're really, really in momentum and you're really funny and you're really on point, then if somebody's a little bit more closed off, again, you could begin to leave, but just continue to be funny and converse as you're kind of pulling back, and that can actually release a bit of tension, and then they actually want you to come back and they'll be like, wait, and they'll kind of pull you back. But you just wanted to be generally aware of that. So spend some time studying other people's body language and tonality. The problem is, of course, is that if you're low self-esteem, you might start to see only the negative, because your reticular activation system, your selective focus, only sees negative. So you've got to find that balancing act between focusing on the positive and continuing and not being so sensitive to it that you're walking on eggshells, but at the same time putting yourself in the other person's shoes and being adaptive to where they're at. Never be stuck on one person being into you. If anything, you've got a whole area of people. If there's somebody here I want to talk to and they're not super into it, I'm not like, no, it has to be them. It has to be them. No, I'm just going to keep enjoying myself. Oh, nice to meet you, and go meet other people, and then just sort of continue from there.
One simple way to really start familiarizing yourself with this is just look for tension in the person. So for example, if you're pressing that button like joke, at first they might laugh. They're like, that's funny. And then it turns into this kind of right? Or they might take a step back. You might see it in their eyes. They start kind of tensing, maybe looking away like, okay, or saying things like, well, gotta go now. Okay, it's a little too much. When that happens, slow down, remove the tension. But if you remove it too much, then it turns into a little too loose, a little too bored. It's like, okay, yeah, okay. And that's where, okay, let's add some tension. And even beyond that, putting yourself in their shoes also really means understanding who they are, how they think, right? The paradigm that they're in. What is their value system, right? Based upon all that, what is the humor that might connect with them? right? What are the types of topics that might connect with them? But then on the flip side, and this is why, again, we could make literally 50 hours of videos on this, you could do that, be like, well, they might like this humor, but then at the same time, if you come in with your own humor and you really own it and it's congruent and it's fun, they will be open to that, okay? But really learning how to understand the person, this also comes with experience, crucial.
But again, I've been fortunate because I've had, like I said, a good friend of mine who's been very patient, extremely patient, and has never been like, oh man, you're done, I'm done, you know, or get over. It's never been that. It's never been the get over or, you know, stop being in your feelings, whatever. It's just always receptive, patience, and responsive, you know. And I wake up in the morning and I see a message and it's like a 9-minute. And I'm like, oh, that's a short way. Jipping me off, man. You cheat with your voice messages. And then I get like a 22 one and I'm like, oh, it's Christmas time in July. You know? So yeah, it's important to have, you know, and again, I've just been fortunate to have that person, you know, and I'm keeping them.
So I think a lot of us, we've developed a sort of filter that we can throw on to kind of filter ourselves for the majority of people. And this filter, that seems like the point of it, at least in my case, is to just keep from freaking everybody out. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like, just keep it chill, don't freak people out. And every once in a while, right, like I'll let something slip, or maybe I'll go a little too deep with somebody and you can kind of see the look on their face and I think that's been a running theme in my life, is that the majority of people don't understand me. They don't understand what I'm saying. And even when I explain in quite simple terms, I feel still like most people don't try to understand first before replying.
Just real quick. So I'm here, and as you know, a lot of you know that I'm also a DJ, right? So involved in nightlife. And so just quickly, coming here because of my extensive experience, again, living overseas, living in Miami, right, one of the capitals of nightlife, especially in the United States. I've been, you know, I've had the privilege of working with different folks who are high up there in nightlife, different DJs, having the opportunity to have conversations with, and just see the behind the scenes of a lot that goes on, you know, during nightlife. And because of that, I've like being here, I've sort of, because we have, you know, some nightlife here as well. And I found that because I've tried to impose some of my knowledge, it's like people feel threatened. You know what I'm saying to you? And again, then I find myself just like vomiting information, and I'll like send videos and I'm like, oh, I got this. And then I'll take a video, I'll cut it up real quick. And I'm like, yeah, you see, this is how it is, whatever. And just people be like, yo, dude, like, and then some people are receptive to it, which I appreciate, the people who with experience, but those who aren't, they feel that they have more experience, which they don't, because I know, because they've expressed that they don't have that the level of experience. But they feel a certain way because they feel as if I'm projecting, as if I'm tooting my horn, when in reality it's not. It's just I'm providing perspective so that everyone can understand, because I'm trying to help everyone, not just me. And then I sort of like feel, oh man, I'm doing it again. I'm doing the most. I'm trying to teach everybody. I'm trying to like help. And it's just coming across as like me just being a freaking tyrant as usual and being so intense. And I'm like, all right, let me step back. And it's just so frustrating, man. Like it's so frustrating because I just don't like dealing with people who just don't understand me, because it comes across as if like I'm just some kind of tyrant and some bull, which I'm not.
Before coming up with some kind of a rebuttal, one of my observations with this sort of more intellectual side of me is that most people don't want that in their relationships. Maybe they do in their main romantic relationship, I'm not sure. But in their friendships, it just seems like they want it chill. They want to just, let's hang out, let's keep it light. I've heard this literally word for word from a couple different people in my life. At this point, it's like they get to this certain point where they're like sick of my depth and intense conversations, and they end up coming up with some level of this, like, can you just keep it chill? So what are the problems with being a dot connector? It seems to be fairly universal that INFJs are interested in figuring out people and trying to understand from a deep level what exactly is going on. So here is one possible cause for intensity and why I'm thinking people might perceive me as intense, is I like to hear people admit things. Even if I know that they're thinking something, I like to ask questions and really get to the bottom of it until they themselves admit.
You know exactly what he's saying.
Why people might view me as intense related to this stuff I've been talking about is that I don't easily drop issues. I feel like there's something that needs to be resolved, let's say in a relationship, friendship, family, something, or even like a disagreement or what I perceive as some matter of principle that kind of needs to be discussed. I have a hard time dropping that until the issue's settled and there's some kind of closure. I've noticed that in most other people, many other people, they don't really need closure the way I do.
So, and I think I've said in my previous videos, there's this issue with the whole bluff, right? Again, working for the government, people are prior military. They use the bluff acronym, right? Blunt, upfront. And essentially what that means, for those who don't know, it's you have to give me the synopsis, the gist of what you want to talk about upfront, and then you can give me the background later. So which means that just in and out, like don't give me the details, just give me the overarching idea of what it is. And I find myself a lot of times having discussions with people and they tell me, get to the point. And I'm like, and it's usually like, I don't know what MBTI personality type they are, but those types really annoy me because they're so like, everything for them is like this. And to me, I can't deal with them because I'm trying to explain to them. I'm trying to say, hey, listen, I need to give you to paint the picture here before I go into the details because I feel like I need to give them the context, because if I don't give them the context, they're not going to understand. And often that's what happens. They want the bluff. So I give them the bluff. Boom. And then now it's like, they come asking me for more questions. And I'm like, well, if you had given me the 20 minutes that I needed, then you would have had all the information that you need. But I run into it all the time. And now I'm running into it now and even via email. So now it's like, instead of now giving like a bluff, I'll just send out the email and be like, okay, here you go. And expect that person to actually read or open up whatever file that I send to them and for them to do their own. And they're like, no, you shouldn't do that. You have to send a synopsis, a brief, sort of a general, idea of what, the content is, what the background of this is. And I'm like, listen, dude, like, pick it. Like, it's either you want it or you don't, because I can't do this whole back and forth thing. But yeah, I struggle with that as well. People with these blunt, upfront people, like get to the point people. Oof.
So as I seek closure on an issue, and if they are trying to sort of back off and not deal with it, that is where they can start to view me as very intense. So just an example, I have an old friend. He loves to have deep conversations. He himself is quite intense. He's very focused and driven and quite successful in his business that he's created. And I would define him as intense in those ways. But where we differ is I will ask him to explain himself. I will ask him why he thinks a certain thing or believes a certain thing. I sort of almost, just by default, I think in a friendship, almost demand. I mean, that sounds harsh, but maybe it's just a reality. I kind of demand a certain level of self-reflection to even operate on a basic level of friendship. On one hand, you've got a person that can handle deep discussions when it's not about them, but as soon as it's about them, all of a sudden they shut down. They can't handle it.
Yep.
So yeah, I think in general, the intensity comes from challenging people, asking people their opinion, asking why, asking for clarification. Why do you believe this? I think all of that can be perceived as challenging somebody. I think along with that, even us being curious, just curiosity itself leads to questions. And it's something I've noticed, like, I'm curious about that. Let me ask a few questions about that. And people are like, how dare you ask questions about that?
And that's one of the things at work as well. So we'll have meetings and people won't ask questions. And I'm like, I know you have questions. I know there's going to be sidebar meetings after this meeting, like individual group chats. Why don't you speak up now? Like, ask. And as soon as I start asking, you can tell people start getting, restless, and they're like, oh, okay, this guy's asking questions again. And I'm like, stop being so scared, man. Like this whole conflict aversion and not wanting to speak up, but then you have a problem with it. It's like, stop it, and I know it's tough. It's just to say, stop it. It's tough. I'm not saying, but what I'm saying to you is that it's annoying to me. It's really annoying.
So what I've noticed is that as I'm collecting puzzle pieces and I'm trying to form connections between things, is a lot of people might look at me like I'm completely crazy because they see no connections between this, and this. And I'm going, I'm seeing a pattern. I'm seeing a common thread, and I'm trying to figure it out to put together this puzzle, to form this concept. And I've noticed that other people, they look at me and they go, those things, like, what are you talking about? You're like talking about this thing, and then you're talking about this thing, and they almost feel like I'm off topic, or I'm talking about multiple things that aren't related, but to me they are related. And to us, it feels dismissive. And it feels like somebody isn't giving us a chance to maybe fully explain our position. Or they kind of just write it off like, get to the point. And I think that's the problem with introverted intuition to other people, especially those people that are like kind of like get to the point type of people, is that intuitive process is a slow process, and it's kind of it's like things percolate, and sometimes it takes a while for us to get to that finished concept.
And that's one of my issues. When I come into like a new environment, whether it be a new workspace or new environment within, like, let's say my hobby, right? It takes a while. Like I feel like I'm like the dumbest person, right? Because some people, they can just grab it. Like they're just so good at like the technical aspect, and they have this gee whiz concept about a gee whiz, not a concept, but like a feature about them, right? Or trait, like a gee whiz trait about them, that they can remember technical aspects, especially like the INTJs, the ENFJs to a certain extent. They can remember these gee whiz concepts, these technical things. And it's like, for me, I don't remember these things. However, once I learn the program or I learn the system itself, I can then take that and apply it to a bigger picture, which then overrides all of that technical aspect, because then I'm like, this connects to that, and this is why this is, and this is why this is, and this is why that is. And sometimes I'll butt heads with those technical folks because they only see things from that perspective, and I'm like, yeah, you're good here, but guess what? There is a third of us, a preliminary, secondary, and tertiary effect to all of this, because if this connects to this, and this is why this. But because they're so focused on here, they're within their immediate space, they're not really worried about other people. I'm like, yeah, it's going to affect different people, because again, we're people, right, as INFJs, but they're just focused on the technical aspect. And so if you try to explain it, they'll be very dismissive because they're so focused on that, and be like, yeah, but you have someone who may not really get it here, so you need to slow it down. And they don't know how to do that transition, which is funny.
And once we get to that finished concept, then we can be quite to the point, and we can say this because of X, Y, and Z. But before we get to that point, it can appear a little wishy-washy and vague, almost like this abstract concept that we're trying to develop. And I think that specifically can frustrate people. They look at us sort of like as obsessive or intense because we're trying to form these connections and obsess over these details that really don't appear to mean anything to them.
So yeah, like that's when I first watched that video, I was like, wow. And again, but what was the point of me watching that video? Because I was doing research. That's the irony of it all, right? I was in that space where I felt that I just was misunderstood, and that I wasn't being taken for my work and my experiences. And what I was saying to them was like, hey, listen, this is what this is. And they were just taking things so out of context. And I was like, man, I gotta prove it. I gotta prove it. Even if it's not to them, but to myself. And then it came about that video, and I'm like, there it is. And it just so happens, I like I said, if you don't believe it or not, but as a Scorpio, I believe in coincidences, and like, I don't think that video was made too far away. But I've had a lot of coincidences when I'm looking for stuff, and this material just happens to be right then and there when I need it, and then I can use it. And then, but I made this video, and I was gonna send it to somebody, but I'm like, don't send it. I was like, don't send it, because that person's not gonna get it, because that person is not like my other folks who have the patience, who are willing to take it in and be like, oh, okay. This person's gonna look at it and be like, why are you sending me this for? It's like, he'll ask me literally, what credentials does this person have? Like, what are you worried about credentials for? We're talking about a video. Like, what are you worried about? Like, like, who is this? Like, what is he, like, they have to know who this person is, why that person's there, why are they making a video, like, who are they talking to? Like, they have, to them, just for him making a video and explaining the content, they don't understand it. They don't get it. Like, they have to know, like, the exact, and I don't know what personality type that is, but it's frustrating to me. It's like, dude, just here's the material. Just listen to it, internalize it, take it. Stop trying to figure everything out. And then, but those are the ones who are challenging because they don't understand my perspective as well, because they always want to challenge. They want to rebut. They always want to counter my thoughts and ideas, and that's why I don't share a lot of information with them, because I'm just tired of having to deal with that. They always feel that they need to, sort of give their own opinion, but little do they know is that I've captured a lot. When I say a lot, many of their insecurities. I don't bring it up, but I know where it comes from. So it's challenging. And so what I have to do is I have to make face. Like I have to just like play the game, not let it affect me, and try to just maintain frame, right? So that I don't look as if like whatever they're doing is affecting me. I'm just like, all right, cool, whatever. And then I'll just switch the subject, and then if we contact each other, I'll play it off, because like sometimes they'll contact me, but like, hey, you good? I'm like, oh, I'm good. They're trying to catch me. They're not gonna catch me. But again, it's not an argument. It's not we're having a discussion. And the thing is, again, if I bring up the whole point of, hey, listen, we had this discussion yesterday, and it's one of those things where you don't want to drop it. They're gonna be like, all right, dude, like, we had this discussion, so that's why it's like, you pick your battles. Like, you got to know when to let go, right? So like my wife, she's very patient. So even if something's bothering me, I'll come back, and like I'll send her, like, let's say for example, we had a conversation last night about something, and then it was a long conversation, and we ended it, and then I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about it again. I'll get on WhatsApp and I'll send her a voicemail just to reiterate my thoughts. Hey, I just want to, but for her, she's responsive, she's receptive to that. But a lot of people, they're gonna be like, why? Like, just drop it, just let it go. And it's for good reason, right? Sometimes, but again, you got to know who you're dealing with. Some people, I'll continue, right? And I have my other friend, he'll be like, hey, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but this is the last one I'm going to send to you. So we can sort of know and feel, okay, when it's getting a little old and tiring, right? But we still have that patience to sort of go back and forth with each other. But I hope this video was entertaining as well as educational. Again, it's not about me teaching folks, but I do have a competitive edge, and part of it also, it's like not trying to convince, but it's my competitive edge, and saying, hey, you may not think I'm an INFJ, but I think just like you, right? And it is what it is. So I'm happy I'm back. I'm going to be consistent here for, I guess, the next few months. So sit back. Again, I'm not expecting a whole lot of views. This is for the very few who watch this and who appreciate it. And I'm never going to change. I'm never going to change for anybody. And I'll always remain the same, right? Always remain constant in terms of who I am as an individual. Remain authentic to self. On that note, I appreciate you. See you in a few days. Johnny Fontana, Real World INFJ Scorpio. We are back and we are out.